Welcome to another deep dive.
Hmm.
Today we're going to explore something really fascinating. It's called Lafarium.
Lafarium.
Okay, so imagine this. A project starts out as a print scene way back in 1997 in Argentina,
Wow. Okay.
and it eventually blossoms into this huge multimedia thing. I mean, we're talking web scenes, books, documentaries, even a streaming channel.
A streaming channel, huh?
Yeah. And get this, they've got this whole white is black, shadow is light aesthetic going on.
Oh, interesting. I like that.
Yeah, it's super intriguing, right?
Definitely.
So to guide us through this deep dive, we've got two main sources. There's a YouTube video featuring Lafarium's founder, Diego Arandojo. He reflects on like 25 years of Lafarium's history.
25 years. Wow.
Yeah, and we also got this PDF document. It chronicles Lafarium's evolution, all the different forms that it's taken over the years.
Okay, so where do we even begin with something like this?
Well, I think the best place to start is with the founders, right? Like, who were these people? What was their vision?
Yeah, that makes sense. So from what I've gathered, Arandojo and his friend Maximiliano Ramos, who was a writer, they started Lafarium.
Yeah.
And they were fueled by this shared love of heavy metal and Gothic literature.
Really? A heavy metal Gothic literature combo, huh?
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting mix. But it wasn't just that they were into the music and the stories. They really wanted to create a platform for art that kind of challenged the norms, art that explored the darker, more experimental side of things.
It's like they were tapping into something that the mainstream wasn't really paying attention to.
Right, exactly. And they had this tagline, something like thinking in the dark in front of the mirror, which I think really captures that mood.
Wow, that's a really evocative tagline.
Yeah.
It's like they were building their own world where darkness and creativity kind of intertwine. What else?
Well, their very first issue had illustrations by William Blake, even a comic strip. So you can kind of see how they were setting the stage
Yeah.
for what was to come.
Oh, that's interesting. I always love seeing those early works from artists and creators to see how their vision kind of starts to take shape.
Absolutely. And even the name, Lafarium.
Yeah. What's the story behind that?
Well, Arandojo actually invented it, and it means the room without time or space. I mean, it's that concept of creating a world outside the ordinary.
So it's not just about the content. They were also thinking about the whole experience of engaging with Lafarium, creating this space where you could escape from the everyday world.
Exactly. And that's what's so fascinating about them. They weren't just putting out a publication. They were crafting an entire aesthetic, an entire worldview.
And then they made a move that changed everything, right?
Yeah. The internet.
The internet, yeah. I mean, lots of publications were going digital around that time, but Lafarium
Right.
did it in a way that felt true to who they were.
Yeah, it's true. They didn't just replicate the print scene online. They took advantage of what the web could offer, greater reach, global collaboration. It really pushed the boundaries of what a digital publication could be.
And there's this one detail that I found really interesting from the YouTube video. Arandojo talks about putting a disclaimer on their website, almost like a warning,
Oh, really? What did it say?
basically saying that their content might not be for everyone, especially people who are easily disturbed.
Wow, that's bold. Most publications are trying to get as many readers as possible. They were deliberately being selective.
It's like they were saying, if you're not into the dark stuff, this is not the place for you.
Right, which is pretty cool, actually. It shows how committed they were to their vision. They weren't afraid to alienate some people to stay true to themselves.
So did they achieve the success they were looking for?
Well, it gets even more interesting. Instead of just being a webzine, they branched out into multimedia. Short films, documentaries, even their own streaming channel.
Wow. So they were really pushing the boundaries of what Lafarium could be.
And what's remarkable is that this expansion wasn't a departure from their roots. It was an extension of them. They were using new mediums to further explore the themes and ideas that were already central to Lafarium.
Okay, so they were using these new mediums to really dig deep into the things that they were already passionate about. That's smart, especially for a project that's all about challenging norms and pushing boundaries. But what kind of films and documentaries do they make? Do they have that same thinking in the dark sensibility?
They did, definitely. In the PDF, they mention a documentary on a writer named Juan Jacobo Bajalia and a sci-fi film called Las 77 Páginas, and later a series called Documentales en Viñetas, which focused on Argentine comics.
That's not your typical mainstream productions.
Definitely not. Experimental, often surreal, always thought-provoking.
This is what I love about these deep dives. We're not just learning about a project. we're getting a glimpse into a whole different way of thinking about art and creativity.
Right. And it makes you wonder what else is out there? What other amazing things are people creating?
Exactly. So we've seen how Lafarium evolved from a print zine into this multimedia powerhouse. But what do you think was the driving force behind it all? What kept them going for over 25 years?
I think at its core, Lafarium is about providing a platform for what they call the underculture. The voices and art that exist outside the mainstream, they've been championing this cause for over 2 decades. And you can see that commitment in everything they do. Their projects, contests, even down to their visual aesthetic, like using white as black and shadow as light.
So it's not just about the content. It's about the values they represent. They're giving a voice to the marginalized, the artists and creators who don't fit into those neat little boxes.
Exactly. And that commitment has clearly resonated with people for a very long time.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, what's the secret to their success? How have they managed to stay relevant for so long?
That is a good question, and I think we should definitely explore that further.
Yeah, let's do it. But before we do, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll delve into how Lafarium has managed to stay innovative and continue to captivate audiences for all these years.
You were talking about Lafarium in the digital world.
Oh, yeah, they really embraced it.
Didn't just like dip their toes in, they went all
It
in.
was a whole new canvas for them, and they jumped right in.
It really was. So they turned Lafarium Carticas into a webzine.
Yeah, back in the early 2000s.
Early 2000s, a lot of things were happening online back then.
And get this, they used this horizontal format
Horizontal.
for their webzine.
Interesting. Most literary publications were vertical back then.
Tons of scrolling.
Yeah, so much scrolling.
But Lafarium, they were already thinking outside the box, even back then.
Even with their website design.
Totally. Their format. It kind of mirrored their content.
How so?
Unconventional sprawling, almost cinematic.
Yeah, you weren't just reading the words and looking at the images, you were experiencing them.
Yeah, exactly. And their content was wild. I mean, they published everything. Short stories, poetry, essays, even a necromantic cookbook.
Wait, a necromantic cookbook?
Yeah, you heard that right.
What was in that?
It sounds pretty out there, right?
Yeah, like recipes for summoning the dead or something?
Well, it seems like it was more tongue-in-cheek.
Okay, so not a real cookbook.
No more like a playful exploration of the macabre.
Playing with death, the supernatural.
Yeah, they even had a dictionary of Lafarium.
A dictionary.
Yeah, it's still on their website. You can check it out.
Okay, what's in the dictionary?
It explains their mythology. Adds all these layers of intrigue to their world.
So they were world building even back then.
They were way ahead of their time. Like those online communities now where people create these massive fictional universes.
Right.
Lafarium was doing it before it was cool.
So they were pioneers in a way.
But they didn't forget their roots, did they?
Their gothic literature and heavy metal roots.
Exactly. They kept publishing interviews with musicians like Lupercalia and Thegriff, even a shaman named Santa Rita.
Wow. A shaman.
That's Lafarium for you. This blend of high and low culture, filtered through this dark and unconventional lens.
It's what makes them so unique.
And their website. It wasn't just about consuming content. They had a community section where readers could connect and share their own creations.
So it was interactive.
Yeah. And they had a links section too, like a curated directory of websites and resources related to their interests.
They were early adopters of online community building, creating a space for people who felt drawn to this other culture.
Like-minded individuals finding each other online.
And all while maintaining this commitment to quality.
Yeah, their editorial standards were high. They kept attracting talented contributors from all over the world.
And they got recognized for it, too.
They won an award.
From the Fondo Nacional de las Artes in Argentina.
For their online magazine.
Pretty impressive.
So they were getting recognized for their artistic merit, not just their unconventional approach.
And weren't just shock value, they had substance.
And then there's their expansion into multimedia.
Which is a whole other level.
They were always looking for new ways to express their vision, to bring this other culture to life.
Through different mediums.
Exactly. They didn't limit themselves to just the written word.
They saw the potential of film and video.
Powerful ways to explore their themes and ideas.
And they formed Lafarium Producciones.
To produce short films.
Like El Flamador Selenita.
El Obesito Desoxigenado.
And El Excremento Mutante.
Those titles alone.
They definitely don't shy away from the strange or the provocative.
But they also made documentaries.
More serious territory.
Their first feature-length film was a documentary.
About the writer Juan Jacobo Bajarlia.
Directed by Romy Benemio and written by Arandojo himself.
Then they made a sci-fi film.
Called Las 77 Páginas.
Directed and co-written by Mauro Savarino and Diego Arandojo.
So they weren't just producing,
They were creating, writing, directing.
fully immersed in the filmmaking process.
And they didn't forget their love of comics.
No, they didn't. Their series Documentales and Viñetas is proof of that,
Exploring the history and artistry of Argentine comics.
showcasing this often overlooked art form.
And then there's Lafarium TV,
Hold on, Lafarium TV.
their own streaming platform.
Wow, I didn't know about that.
It featured interviews, experimental videos, music,
All presented with their noise aesthetic.
noise aesthetic.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to explain.
Imagine visuals that are deliberately distorted, fragmented, almost chaotic.
They're trying to disrupt our expectations, to create this feeling of unease or disorientation.
It's a visual style very much in line with their whole philosophy.
Challenging norms, embracing the unconventional.
Pushing the boundaries of multimedia storytelling.
And they were so active in promoting other artists and writers who shared their vision.
Through contests.
They hosted all these contests over the years,
Each with a unique theme.
encouraging creativity, pushing people to think differently.
It wasn't just about winning,
It was about encouraging people to think outside the box
and they published some of the winning entries,
in their publications,
giving these up-and-coming artists and writers a platform.
to share their work with a wider audience.
Expanding their network, nurturing new talent.
And they even published the winning entries from their Mi Abuela Tiene un Bicho contest
Which was open to Spanish-speaking writers from all over the world,
as an ebook,
expanding their reach and impact.
connecting with a global audience.
It's clear that Lafarium is more than just a publication or a production company.
It's a cultural force,
A movement that celebrates the unconventional.
challenging us to look beyond the surface,
Exactly. It's an invitation to explore the shadows
to embrace the things that make us uncomfortable,
and to discover the beauty that often hides in the darkness.
recognizing that the world is full of complexities and contradictions,
And that there's value in exploring all of it.
not just the parts that are easy or comfortable.
This is where it gets really interesting.
We've talked about what they did.
But why do you think Lafarium resonates so deeply with people?
What is it about this other culture that's so appealing?
It speaks to this fundamental human need.
To question, to explore, to challenge the status quo,
We all have this darkness within us.
a fascination with the unknown.
And Lafarium provides a safe space to confront those aspects of ourselves.
It's like they're saying, it's okay to be different.
It's okay to embrace the things that scare you.
You're not alone,
A powerful message.
especially in a world that tries to put us all in neat little boxes.
Lafarium reminds us that there's beauty in the unconventional.
That the things that make us uncomfortable can also be sources of creativity and inspiration.
They've created this community where people can celebrate their individuality
Explore their darker impulses.
and connect with others who share their passion for the other culture.
And they do it with this sense of playfulness and humor.
It's not all doom and gloom,
There's a real joy and energy in their work.
but their impact goes beyond just art.
I agree. It extends to culture as well.
Absolutely. By showcasing the other culture, they've given a platform to marginalized voices and perspectives.
They've helped to broaden our understanding of what art can be.
And who gets to create it?
They've challenged us to look beyond the surface.
And to appreciate the beauty and complexity of the world around us.
But there's still more to unpack here.
Yeah, there's more to this story.
We've covered a lot of ground.
But there's still more to explore.
More to discover about Lafarium's legacy.
And what it means for us today, their journey through these different mediums.
Oh yeah, it's really something.
It speaks to how adaptable they are.
Totally. It's incredible how they've stayed relevant and engaging for like 3 decades. I mean, they've gone from print to digital to webzines, documentaries, books, even streaming.
Love we all.
They never lost sight of their mission.
To showcase the other culture.
Exactly.
What I find really interesting is
Yeah.
how they bridge the gap between digital and physical. They've released ebooks
Like the Mi Abuela Tiene un Bicho collection.
and Harlock's Loosely Tangible.
Right.
But they also have their own publishing imprint for physical books.
You're right. I almost forgot about their physical books.
Yeah.
It's like they understand that different people consume content in different ways.
And they're trying to meet their audience wherever they are.
So they've released titles like
Lafarium.
Lafarium presenta De Monstrorum, Bestias y Sombras de Enrique Alcatena.
And Lafarium,
Mm.
20 años de oscuridad.
I wonder if there's a difference in tone or content between their digital and physical publications.
That's a great question. Maybe their physical books allow them to go more in depth with certain themes?
While their digital platforms offer more immediate experience,
Maybe.
but even within those different formats,
They haven't been afraid to experiment.
like their Piegos del Dolor series,
Focused on ritual music and dark female writers.
they're not afraid to dive into those niche subjects.
The things that often get overlooked.
It's like they're always searching for the hidden gems, the voices that deserve to be heard.
The ones that haven't found their audience yet.
And they're not just reacting to trends, they're anticipating them.
Like their Apocalypse and a Normal series.
Both released during the pandemic,
Responding to current events.
offering a unique perspective.
On the challenges we face.
They're not afraid to tackle the tough stuff.
To explore our anxieties and fears.
It's like they're giving us a space
To process those difficult emotions.
to find meaning in the chaos,
And they do it with this distinctive style.
a real sense of purpose.
It's clear that Lafarium is more than just a brand or a platform.
It's a reflection of the people behind it,
Their passions, their beliefs.
their dedication to this other culture.
Speaking of exploring,
Yeah.
their latest work, El Hemisferio Nocturno de la Tierra,
A documentary.
about the life and work of writer Marco Dinebi.
It seems like a natural progression for them.
It does. A documentary about a writer who explored the darker side of human nature.
Perfect for Lafarium.
And they're not slowing down either.
What are they working on now?
A documentary about the life and work of abstract painter Juan del Prete.
Called La Orden del Lunar.
It's interesting who they choose as their subjects,
People who might not be mainstream.
but who have made significant contributions,
They're shining a light on these individuals,
making sure their work isn't forgotten.
thinking about everything they've done.
All the different mediums.
I think Lafarium's impact goes way beyond art and literature.
I see what you mean. They've created a space for marginalized voices.
By showcasing this other culture,
They've given a platform to artists and writers who might have been ignored,
challenging the mainstream,
expanding our understanding of what art can be,
and who gets to create it.
contributing to a more inclusive cultural landscape.
And their work asks some important questions.
About the role of art in society.
How can art make us think differently?
How can it give a voice to the voiceless?
How can it help us understand each other better?
These are questions we all grapple with
And Lafarium offers us a way to engage with those questions
through their work.
in a meaningful way.
Their journey is really inspiring,
It shows us that creativity can flourish anywhere.
even in the darkest corners.
There's always an audience for bold and unconventional work.
Work that makes you think.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Into the world of Lafarium.
what's the biggest takeaway for our listeners?
I think it's that there's always room for innovation, for challenging norms, for creating something truly unique. Lafarium shows us that it's possible to stay true to your vision while also adapting to a changing world.
Find
Yeah.
your niche
Cultivate your community.
and never be afraid to experiment.
And recognize the power of the other culture.
The voices and perspectives that are often overlooked.
Lafarium reminds us that there's beauty in the unconventional,
In the things that make us uncomfortable.
in the shadows.
By embracing the darkness.
We can discover new ways of seeing,
Thinking and creating.
and maybe we'll even uncover something beautiful along the way.
This has been an amazing journey. I hope you've enjoyed this deep dive into the world of Lafarium. If you're looking for something that will challenge your perceptions, expand your horizons, and introduce you to a whole new world of art and culture,
Then definitely check out Lafarium.
you won't regret it.